Hello viewers, welcome back to my channel Legal Decipher. In the previous video we had talked about admission in chapter 2 of the Indian Evidence Act of the 1872. If you have not seen that video, you can go and check it. The link is in the description below. In this video we will talk about statements made under special circumstances under chapter 2 of the Indian Evidence Act. We'll go through the chapter and try to understand the substance therein. So if you're new here, please like and subscribe to my channel to get the video notifications. So let's get started. So in this video we will discuss about statements made under special circumstances. So whenever a statement is made in a special circumstances, what will be the relevancy of that statement? So this part of the chapter 2 is divided into two basic concepts. The first of which is statements by persons who cannot be called as witnesses, and the second part is statements made in special circumstances. So first understand what statements by persons who cannot be called as witnesses deal with. The first section is section 32, which talks about cases in which statement of relevant fact by person who is dead or cannot be found, etc. is relevant. So this is that section, a part of which deals with dying declaration. We will discuss about all of this in this particular video. So first understand that section 32 does not only talk about dying declaration, it also specifies all those other circumstances where a person cannot be called as witnesses. It may not be because the person is dead, it may be for many other reasons. There are exactly 8 specific clauses that talk about those situations where a person cannot be called as a witness, but still his statements can be admissible in a particular trial or proceedings. So let's go through section 32. It says statements which are either written or verbal of relevant facts. So the statements may be written or verbal, and they should be of relevant facts made by a person who is either dead or who is not found, that means he cannot be found, or who has become incapable of giving evidence for any kind of reason. So either he is dead, or he cannot be found at present, or he has become incapable at present of giving any evidence in a particular trial or proceedings. So in that case, or a person whose attendance cannot be procured without an amount of delay or expense. So either his attendance to a particular trial will be expensive or will cause such amount of delay as it would be unreasonable. Now under these circumstances of the case, if it appears to the court that it is unreasonable to call for such person, then in all those cases, if that person is dead or he is not found, or he is found incapable of giving evidence, or whose attendance cannot be procured without any amount of delay or expense which is unreasonable in the eyes of the court, then in all those cases the statements, whether written or verbal, of relevant facts made by such person who cannot be produced before the court for a trial or proceedings will themselves become relevant facts in the following cases. So there are specified cases where such statement will be considered as relevant in itself. So they will themselves be relevant facts. What are the conditions? Number 1, it says when it relates to the cause of death. So when the statement is made by a person as to the cause of his death. So say for example, that person before dying has mentioned something. He has made a statement that I am going to die because of this reason. So he has actually mentioned the cause of his death. So in that case, that person's statement will be considered as a relevant fact. Such statements are relevant whether the person who made them was or was not at the time when they were made under expectation of death, and whatever may be the nature of the proceedings in which the cause of his death comes into question. So it does not matter whether his statement was directly relevant to the cause of his death. It may be so that the person had made such statement and afterwards he has died within a very short interval of time. In that case, such statement will also be considered as a dying declaration if it somehow relates to the reason for such death. The second point is when it is made in course of business. So whenever the statement was made by such a person in any ordinary course of business, and in particular when it consists of any entry or memorandum made by him in the books kept in the ordinary course of business. So either the statement was made in ordinary course of business, or if such statement was made as an entry or memorandum that is made in a book which is kept in the ordinary course of a business, or whether he has made such statement in the discharge of a professional duty, or he has acknowledged in writing, or if he has signed a particular receipt of money, goods, securities or properties of any kind, or if it is a document used in commerce which is written or signed by him, or of the date of a letter or other document usually dated, signed or written by him. So in all these cases, that particular statement will be relevant fact. Now clause 3 says, or against interest of maker. So when the statement is against the pecuniary or proprietary interest of the person making it, or when, if true, it would expose him or would have exposed him to a criminal prosecution or to a suit for damages. So whether such statement is against the pecuniary or proprietary interest of that person who is making such statement, or if such statement is true, that statement would expose such person who is making it or would have exposed him to a criminal prosecution or to a suit for damages. Now we have already read in the Evidence Act that a statement made by a person can be used against him. So this is an example of that. A person who is making such statement, if it is against the pecuniary or proprietary interest of such person, or if it exposes him to a criminal prosecution or to a suit for damages, then that will be a relevant fact. Clause 4 talks about opinions as to public right or custom or matters of general interest. So when a statement gives out the opinion of any person as to the existence of any public right or custom or matter of public or general interest, the existence of which would have likely to aware, and when such statement was made before any controversy as to such right, custom or matter had arisen. So either it gives out the existence of such right or custom or a matter of general interest, or it alleges controversy regarding such right, custom or matter, then in all those cases the statement will be considered as a relevant fact. Clause 5 says, or if it relates to the existence of any relationship. So whether the statement relates to the existence of any relationship by blood, by marriage or by adoption between the persons, then if such statement was made before the question in dispute was raised, then that will also be considered as a relevant fact. Clause 6 says, or if it is made in will or deed relating to family affairs. So if the statement was made in a particular will or in a particular deed relating to family affairs, means relationship by blood, marriage or adoption between persons deceased and the person for whom the will or deed was made, then in that case, or if it is written in any family pedigree or upon any tombstone or a family portrait or other thing, then all those things will be considered, all those statements will be considered regarding a question in dispute as a relevant fact. Now clause 7 says, or in document relating to transactions mentioned in section 13 clause A. So whether the statement was contained in any deed, will or other document and it relates to any such transaction that is mentioned in section 13 clause A, then that will also be considered as a relevant fact. And the final clause 8 talks about, or is made by several persons and expresses feelings relevant to matter in question. So whether a matter is in question and a particular group of persons, that means several persons, are expressing their feelings that is relevant to such matter in question, then that particular statements or number of statements will also be considered as a relevant fact. There is a very important matter that we should discuss here, that is, the oral dying declaration is admissible evidence. which means if a person has made any oral dying declaration, then that will be admissible as an evidence in a particular trial or proceedings. It is an exception to the general rule of evidence that hearsay evidence is no evidence in the eyes of law, and it should be discarded as general rule because the evidence in all cases must be direct. However, oral dying declaration is an exception to that rule of hearsay evidence. The law is quite clear that if the dying declaration is absolutely credible and nothing is brought on record that the deceased was in such a condition that he or she could not have made a dying declaration to a witness, there is no justification to discard the same. So what is the reason for admitting dying declaration in evidence? A dying declaration is admitted in evidence on the principle nemo moritans prosecutor mentiri, which means a man will not meet his maker with a lie in his mouth. The person who is about to die or who is dying, he will not be in such a mental state that he could lie. Now let's move on to section 33. It says relevancy of certain evidence for proving in subsequent proceedings the truth of facts therein stated. So, evidence which is given by a witness in a judicial proceedings or before any person who is authorized by law to take it is relevant for the purpose of proving in a subsequent judicial proceedings or in a later stage of the same judicial proceedings. The truth of the facts which it states when the witness is dead or cannot be found or is incapable of giving evidence or is kept out of the way by the adverse party, or if his presence cannot be obtained without any amount of delay or expense which under the circumstances of the case the court considers unreasonable. So what does this section say? This section says that when an evidence has been given by a witness in a particular judicial proceedings, or if such person has given his evidence before any person who is authorized by law to take it, then it will be considered as a relevant fact for the purpose of proving a subsequent judicial proceedings or any other thing that comes up in the same judicial proceedings at a later stage. So whenever a person has given his evidence before a competent person or as a witness in a judicial proceedings, then it will be considered as a relevant fact in any later stage or in any subsequent judicial proceedings. The truth of such facts which such statements state or such evidence states, when such witness is dead or it cannot be found or is incapable of giving evidence or is kept out of the way by the adverse party, or if his presence cannot be obtained without an amount of delay or expense while such court considers it unreasonable, then in that cases such kind of evidences that is given by such person will be considered as a relevant evidence or facts, and it can be used in the later stage or in a subsequent proceedings, provided that the proceedings was between the same parties or their representatives in interest. So it will be relevant only if such evidence is used in a later or subsequent suit between the same parties or their representatives in interest. It cannot be used in suits or proceedings that are between different parties. And also provided that the adverse party in the first proceedings had the right and opportunity to cross-examine. So it must go through the process of a cross-examination in the previous suit or in the prior instance. If it has gone through the process of cross-examination, then that evidence shall be thought to be foolproof. And provided that the questions in issue were substantially the same in the first as in the second proceedings. So, if the question in issue were substantially the same as in the first and in the second proceedings, then it will be considered relevant under section 33. Explanation says a criminal trial or inquiry shall be deemed to be a proceedings between the prosecutor and the accused within the meaning of this section. So, if a criminal trial or inquiry is there, then it will be deemed to be a proceedings between the prosecutor and the accused. Now there are statements made under special circumstances. Section 34 talks about entries in the books of account, including those maintained in an electronic form when relevant. So when the entries in a book of account or entries that are made and maintained in electronic format when they become relevant. That is the subject matter of section 34. It says entries in books of account, including those maintained in an electronic form, regularly kept in the course of business, are relevant whenever they refer to a matter into which the court has to inquire, but such statements shall not alone be sufficient evidence to charge any person with liability. So let's break down the section and understand it. So whenever a book of account or any electronic format has entries in them that are maintained, so when will they become relevant? If they are regularly kept in the course of business. So they are regularly updated. So whenever such updated books or entries that are kept in the course of business refer to any matter into which the court has to inquire, they will become relevant in such cases. But the only condition is that such statements shall not be alone to be sufficient evidence. So that will not be sufficient evidence alone. It needs to be supported with corroborative evidences to charge any person with liability. So that is what section 34 says. Now section 35 says relevancy of entry in public record or an electronic record made in performance of duty. So an entry in any public or other official book, register or record or an electronic record that states a fact in issue or relevant fact, and it is made by a public servant in the discharge of his official duty or by any other person in performance of a duty specially enjoined by the law of the contrary, in which such book, register or record or an electronic record is kept, is itself a relevant fact. So what does this section say? This section says that whenever an entry is made in any such book or any record or any electronic format, if it is made by a public servant in the discharge of his official duty or by any person who is authorized by law to do so, then that register, record or electronic record will be itself a relevant fact. Section 36 says relevancy of statements in maps, charts and plans. So whenever statements of facts in issue or relevant facts made in published maps or charts are generally offered for public sale, or in maps or plans made under the authority of the central government or any state government as to matters usually represented or stated in such maps, charts or plans, are themselves relevant facts. So whenever there is a map or a chart or a plan that has been published by the central government or the state government, and it is made under authority of such government and it is offered for public sale, then such plans, maps or charts will be considered as relevant facts themselves. Now section 37 says relevancy of statements as to fact of public nature contained in certain acts or notifications. So whenever there is an act of a parliament or any central act or provincial act or state act or anything like that, or if it is appearing in any printed paper or it is a government gadget, then that will all be considered as relevant fact. Now section 38 says relevancy of statements as to any law contained in law books. So whenever there is any statement that is recorded in any law book or it is considered as a law, it is printed and published under the authority of the government who is by law authorized to do so, then that will also be considered as a relevant fact. So that's all in this video. If you like my videos, then don't forget to smash the like button and subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much for watching this video.